Hey guys, I'm Naya and welcome back to the channel. For today's video, I decided we're gonna be discussing some engines and cards you may want to pick up moving forward. And why I figured this video would be a good idea is because when nationals are over and the WCQs are over, there's essentially no season, if you want to put it that way, sort of in the summer months. And then everything starts back up in the fall. And for this time, I guess the only thing we can do is get ready for the new format because Power of the Elements is going to be bringing Splight, Tearalment, and just a lot of things are going to happen, in my opinion, because of that set. So I figured why not sort of discuss a couple cards, engines that you might want to have on hand moving forward or something you might want to invest in right now, because I don't really think... And as much as I go sort of back and forth on this one, I don't really think it's such a good idea to invest in decks in particular when the season is almost over, because you can never really know how things are going to perform, how they're going to be hit, how they're going to react to some newly introduced strategies. And maybe it's just a bit of a better idea if you invest in staples, if you invest in some engines that you can utilize moving forward. And with all of that being said, I think we need to go ahead and get started before I basically spoil everything in the intro. Before we begin, I would like to encourage you to let me know down in the comments if I missed anything, if there's anything else that you might want to add, something that you advise people should pick up, and also subscribe. A lot of you are still not, and I would love for you to be part of this community. So first, we're gonna start with the Frog engine. And before we really get into it, I have one more disclaimer to make. I will not be taking into account everything that's budget. This is not a budget video. This is a video of suggesting things, although on the screen I will do my best to show you which packs you can get, not packs, which cards you can get from which packs that are actually the most accessible. But I will also mention when some cards are like $1 as opposed to a couple cents, but they're an ultra, then you would probably rather invest into an ultra, but that's personal preference. We're not going to be getting into that. If you don't want to invest in some cards that are expensive, that makes sense. Like, that's completely okay. I just want to give you a lot of examples. So, the Frog engine. It wasn't reprinted, right? There was no spoiler of anything related to Frog being reprinted, and now that the Meiko Tsunami set is out, we know there's nothing Frog related in there. No Toad, nothing like that. And even though Splight is coming, I think they decided to postpone this reprint since they can pretty much put it in either Battles of Legend, but that's very, very, very late in the year. So I don't think that's going to be the case, but maybe if they put it in some other set to push the set, of course, and to give the frogs some kind of foil printing, that would be really nice, because the foils, the OTS pack ones, are very expensive. So when we actually think about the Frog engine and the commons that you can pick up, or when it comes to Swap Frog, the Ultra from Dual something, either Power, Devastator, something like that. If you can pick up those, they're really inexpensive. And if you do want to pick up Splight and actually play it, then I would suggest that you have the Frog engine, because it is more than likely going to be played with the Frog cards. Now, I wanted to quickly touch upon Totally Awesome. I get that it's very expensive. So if you have it, cool. You can hold on to it if you want. You can sell it, do whatever, because it's not that cheap. And I do think they are going to be reprinting it. But I also think that something like a secret rare, which is like, very pretty, and it's not exactly the kind of not so cool looking rare, something like that is not going to drop in price. So if you just want to have a secret Toad, just go ahead and pick it up, probably, because I don't think they're going to reprint it in a secret rare if they do reprint it sometime in the future. So there's that as well. So that would be the Frog engine. And in tandem with that, I also wanted to touch upon the Nimble stuff. So we have seen, if you're checking out anything related to the OCG builds, Nimble Beaver and Nimble Angler have seen play actually in the Splight deck, and that's because the Tearalment deck obviously mills cards from the top of each player's decks to the graveyard. And if you were to play Deep Sea Diva as your normal summon to get your stuff going, Deep Sea Diva cannot special summon from graveyard, only from decks. So if her targets were to be milled, then it doesn't really do anything. But when it comes to the Nimble cards, what they do is they can special summon from the graveyard. So you know, that's why it makes much more sense to play that in the OCG. But I'm not saying all of the builds are going to exactly become the OCG builds once the cards get here, once Power of the Elements gets here. For Tearalments, you know, there's no Ishizu support. Like, it's not going to be the same, and please don't compare both of the formats, TCG and OCG, that much. But something like a very cheap Nimbo engine is still something you might just want to get in like a trade or something, you know, just if you see it in someone's binder, you know, just get your copies, I guess, if you want to play Splite. Because as, like I said, you know, some things are not going to be exactly the same. However, when time passes, when decks evolve, you just might want to be, you know, you just might want to get that Nimbo engine that you've been keeping it in your binder, you know, and just play it. All right, now we're moving on to a bit of a more expensive card. And basically, I think Crossout Designator is pretty much a must pick up at this point. If you don't already own it, I think you should be investing into it, because right now it's very strong. Most of the Despia builds play it from what I've seen, and in a mirror match heavy format like this one was for some time, it makes a lot of sense not just to counter hand chess, but to actually be able to utilize it in a mirror match. And if OCG proves anything, you know, Splite just might be a tier 0, straight up just mirror, you know, kind of format. And if it does prove to be that, then I think Crossout is going to be a staple, just like it has been in the OCG builds. And overall, you know, I'm not saying just pick it up just because of, like, you know, so you can put it in your Splite deck. But the card is amazing. It's one of those staples that you can really utilize, not in every single format, but when it does see play, I think it's one of the staple cards. And if you're not maining it, you just might want to side it for some specific you know, events when a certain card will hard counter your strategy. So Crossout for sure a must pick up, I think. All right, the next one is the most expensive, so probably the most controversial on this list, and it's Baron de Fleur. So I understand how expensive it is. It's insane. So if you already have it, then it's all good. But I still wanted to put it on this list because it's seeing so much play. You can legit utilize it in pretty much almost every single of the top strategies. You can abuse it in the Synchro deck, you can use it in Sword Soul, you can use it in something like DDD and Pendulum, even in Virtual World. Like, Baron is way too free to be used. Anything with Punk, like anything Punk related, can easily go into Baron as well. And it's just such a generic, just good card. The effect is fair, it's amazing. It's just it's one of those staples that for sure is something you need to have. Even though it's an investment, I don't see it getting reprinted anytime soon, at least for a couple months or until next year, because you do, when it comes to something like Baron, you do want to have that one card that like pushes an entire set with its reprint, and I think Baron might be that. So it's one of those staples that for sure, if you do want to spend the extra money and invest in it, I don't think you'll regret it, because if you invest in Baron anyway, then I'm assuming you have one of the decks that can abuse it, and if Baron does anything, it just makes your strategy even better. So there's that. All right, the next thing we're going to be discussing is you might want to keep a small branded engine on hand. Like, the stuff from the structure deck is not expensive at all. If you look at Branded Fusion, Lubellion, Mirror Jade, Albion, even Fallen of Alba's got the reprint as an Ultra, and the Ultra is not that much more expensive than the common. The difference is probably like $1 or $2, so you probably might want to have that Ultra, but that's, like I said, it's personal preference. I prefer the Ultra though. I mean, Secret is pretty and all, but you know, if you don't want to spend so much, you can invest into an Ultra and just be chill about it. As well as when it comes to Albion, the Branded Dragon, it is a bit more expensive when you look at the difference between the Ultra and the common, but Lightning Overdrive will be getting the tin reprint, and since tins are dropping in the fall, if you want to have like a blinked up, you know, Albion, it's probably going to be in the tins. So there's that as well. And everything is not only inexpensive, but it's so splashable. If you look at Eldritch with Branded, You know, if you look at Tearalments with Branded, that's how it happened. You know, in the OCG, it got started utilizing Branded stuff because Branded Fusion triggers your Tearalments. And Eldritch as well. Like, I think Eldritch is going to be a deck that's going to be performing quite well in the Spite format. And overall, when it comes to the Branded cards, they're just so good. And since they proved to be very splashable and they're not expensive at all, I think it's a very cool pickup. And then the next two we're going to be discussing are going to be Dark Ruler and Droplet. So you could put Forbidden Chalice in here as well, or Infinite Impermanence, but I was more so focused on the actual, I guess, board breaking cards when it comes to negation, like Ruler being able to negate the entire field, Droplet being able to negate multiple monsters, as well as the halving of attack part of the Droplet's effect. And the other one, like Droplet is just busted. But I wanted to group them together, even though Droplet is expensive. Like, I get that it's almost $60 when it comes to the Ultra printing, but it will be getting the tin reprint. And like I said, this video is not meant to be exactly budget, so you can decide for yourself. You can wait until the tins, you can invest in the Ultra if you want. I think Droplet is one of those staples that at some point in time you need to invest into because it is going to enhance your deck. It is going to just do wonders for you. It does make a difference, but Dark Ruler is still busted. And when it comes to some formats, like the Split format, almost inevitably is going to be, Dark Ruler is going to be abused, I think. Like, if you're able to turn off the entire board, that's huge. And even right now, Dark Ruler is being cited because it's honestly a very good card. And it's inexpensive. Like, the last common printing, it's about $1. And even if you want to invest in like the more expensive ones, you can do that if you like the rarity, of course. But it is accessible. It's not exactly Droplet, but it's still very busted. So if you don't already own your copies, I'm pretty sure you should be investing into them. All right, the next topic is going to be a couple extra deck monsters that are just about $1 each, and they're so busted right now and moving forward. So if you take a look at the, for example, Tearalman extra deck or anything related to Splite, if you take a look at extra decks even right now, I think all of these cards are a very smart investment. And the only one that's a bit more expensive, like, I mean, compared to the other ones, because they're honestly very cheap, especially such a generic monster as Zeus is. Like, I keep mentioning Zeus in all of my budget videos because it's a very strong monster and it's not expensive at all. So Zeus, I think, is a must pick up. You know, when it comes to the Splite stuff, they can utilize XYZs like it's nothing. So you need to invest in something like Sky Cavalry Centauri or stuff like that that's very specific for that deck. But when it comes to generic XYZ monsters, something like Baguska, something like Abyss Dweller, like, you have stuff that's so inexpensive but so busted. Salamangreat is basically on the rise, and Baguska is the main go-to play, and both of them can also be utilized, both of them meaning Dweller and Baguska can be utilized in the Tearalman deck since most of the stuff is level 4. And then looking at something like Dark, the Dark Charmer, you have Entes, which is just a very busted monster. It's always been utilized, and I realize it's like $7 or something. And it's pretty much the same, like, when it comes to the gold and the super one. The super one is obviously kind of prettier, but, you know, to each their own. It's not exactly $1, but I still think it's one of those cards that can easily get a reprint, and it's going to knock the price down a bit. And even if it doesn't, like, it's just one copy for the most part, like, usually. So, you know, just invest in this. So if you play a deck that can utilize it, you know, you have it, you keep it in your binder, and it's just there. And it's pretty much the same when it comes to all of them, like Baguska, Dweller, Dark, Zeus, just generic extra deck stuff. Both of the next two are actually going to be engines once more, and I won't spend too much time on the next one because we did touch upon it a bit sooner, and it's going to be Eldritch. Golden Lord is not expensive at all. Golden Lord is so cheap, especially compared to its secret rare printing. So, like I said, like I keep mentioning, if you want to invest in the blinked up stuff, like, sure, you can do that. But if you take a look at all of the Eldritch engine and its reprints, everything is incredibly cheap and accessible. So Conquistador, Hakero, all of that is very, very cheap. And if you look at Lord, if you look at Cursed Outland even, that creeped up in price way back when, before the reprint. And right now, everything is so easy to pick up on. You're not going to break your bank. And also, like I said, Eldritch is, I think, going to be quite a threat moving forward. And even right now, it's very good. It can be used with so many different things. People play it in so many different ways. Like in the last couple weeks, we have seen so many combo decks lists utilizing a small Eldritch package because it's so free, because it grants you follow-up, it grants you a grind game, it grants you removal in the form of Gold Lord going second. Like it's so good. And, I'm a big fan of the Eldritch engine, like, being used. I know that might sound a bit toxic, but I like it a lot. Like, I think the engine is so cool. I think Eldritch stuff is so cool because it's so fair. Like, if you know how to play against an Eldritch, I think you're going to be just fine. So, yeah, like I said, it's cheap, it's splashable, it can be splashed with branded stuff. It can be really good moving forward into the Splight domination. So yeah, I think Eldritch is really something you should be picking up and just have it ready. And then the next one is going to be Punk. And that's also expensive. Like, I get that. If you were smart, or I guess if you didn't really care and just bought it, or if you really did see into the future and sort of predicted stuff, then you got your hands on Punk stuff. If you didn't, it kind of a feels bad moment, because right now, obviously, Foxy Tune, for example, is not that cheap. So yeah, I guess that would be the only expensive thing. And then the next two that are more expensive than the other ones are like $6 or $7. So they're not expensive at all, looking at the entire engine. And I think Punk is so good, and it's kind of been proving itself to be. It's kind of been obvious. It's performing very well in the Synchro Adventure deck. Right now, everything is leaning towards Punk. You have Punk Theory and you have Punk in other decks, and it's just one of those engines, pretty much like Brave. It's very similar to Adventure in how splashable it can be, and how, yeah, it can be played pure, but are you really going to play it pure if you can just splash like 5 busted engines together, So, yeah, like I said, I get it, it's a bit more expensive, but if you're willing to spend the money, I think it's a very strong engine that you can keep on hand. So yeah, to round things off, looking at how splashable Punk is and how good it honestly is, I think it's definitely something worth looking into. And then the very last thing, this one is really like connected to Splight, Terralment, and the OCG in a heavy way, because it is directly taken out of their main deck and side deck. It's going to be Solemn Judgment and Solemn Warning. I mean, like, the solemn stuff, Solemn Brigade. You can get the strikes as well if you want. But my point is, and why I wanted to include that, is basically it's just a fun fact. It's like, well, that's what's happening in the OCG right now. And what's happening is some builds are transforming into sort of, they called it like board breaking builds, because basically you can use something like Dark Ruler, just stuff that's very generic against the Splight Mirror, because most of the time you are going to be playing it, and as well as into other, like just using it into other matchups, because something like Ruler, something like Judgment, all of that is very generic. So because when you have a strategy that's not exactly hindered by hand traps that much, or when you don't really know which ones to utilize, like it becomes too much, and you would just be clogging your list, because you do have the Splight stuff, you have the extenders, and you have crossouts, called buys, all of that, and you just run out of space to run as many hand traps as you would need to be able to stop the opposing deck, so to stop the Splight deck, for example. So if you have something like Ruler, just straight up going second cards that can deal with the board later, and then you establish your own board and maybe set something like Judgment, that's honestly busted, because what Splight is the most reliant on is their normal summon, because they need to have monsters on board to even special summon the other ones. So with all of that being said, that's why we've been noticing Solemn Judgments, even Warnings, pop up in lists in the OCG, and it makes a lot of sense to me. And yeah, like I said, I just wanted to round this list off with something sort of interesting, and something that you might probably already have on hand, because it's just you know, it's solemn stuff. It's very staple. It's very basic. But yeah, that would be I'm pretty sure it was 10 things that you might want to pick up, you might want to invest in if you want, a couple ideas for you. And please, like I said, let me know what you think. Let me know if I missed anything. I didn't include like the hand traps or stuff like called by or D-barrier, things that are very much obvious and cheap. Like for all of that, I have, you know, a lot of content when it comes to budget stuff, staple stuff, and you can check out all of that. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to give you a couple ideas. So if you like the video, of course, like it, sub to the channel, check out all of the social media, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.